Okay, hi everyone. Assalamualaikum and good afternoon and good evening, depending on where you are. Thank you for joining us for today webinar again. My name is Ahmad Syarainun Muhammad Syarani. Currently, I work with Microcorp Sdn Bhd. We are doing a integrated workplace management system, and I will be responsible for hosting this webinar today. Microcorp Sdn Bhd, in collaboration with Construction Industry Development Boards, are initiating a 7 series of webinar discussing on how the facility management activity will need to evolve by exploring the concept and strategies of digitalization. Thank you to CIDB for willingness to collaborate with Microcorp for this webinar. For today's webinar, we are going to talking about operation maintenance, full attacks. It's actually the middle of the battles, and this webinar is part of our 7th series webinar on 2022 Battle of Digital Transformation in Facility Management. We have been hosting series of webinar, and our webinar basically revolve around one theme, which is digital transformation in facility management. The architecture, engineering, and construction industry is leveraging on the ability of the technology to gain optimal result from implementing the digital tools, and the operation and maintenance stage are the largest proportion of a whole life cost of the building process, with a broad spectrum of service competency, processes, and tools required to ensure the built environment will perform the function for which our facility was designed and constructed. Operation and maintenance typically includes the day-to-day activity necessary for the buildings and build structure, the systems and equipment and occupants perform their intent function. Our goal is to build awareness among organization and AEC practitioners on the importance of having comprehensive strategy involving technology advancement in order to make project and organization run more effectively. And this webinar aims to understand knowledge required in effectively managing building operation activity in a digital environment, in improving the whole facility management process. And together with us tonight, we have two speakers. Welcome Mr. Rais Imran, Chief Strategy Officer of UM Argenta Berhad. How are you, Mr. Rais?
Alhamdulillah, thank you very much, Encik Syarainun.
And we have another second speaker, Surveyor Dr. Yohanis Abdul Muttalib, Senior Lecturer of Architecture and Planning Faculty at UiTM Sri Iskandar Perak. How are you, Doctor?
Thank you, Alhamdulillah.
Okay, before we start, we have few housekeeping items. Everyone is on mute, and I think Shafiq, you can stop the music. Before we start, we have a few housekeeping items. Everyone is on mute, and if you have any question for our speaker, please feel free to enter them into the chat box session, and we will be addressing a question at the end of the session. Or you can also ask by raising your hand at the participant section of your Zoom interface. Okay. We're also recording this, and recorded version of today's webinar will be available on demand after the live session. Without any further ado, I would like to turn this over to our first speaker, Mr. Rais Imran. Over to you, Mr. Rais.
Thank you, Encik Ahmad Syarainun. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, and a very good afternoon, evening to all the participants who have joined us today. First of all, allow me to extend my thank you to CIDB as well as Microcorp for organizing this webinar session. In fact, this has been a very interesting webinar session. I understand from Syarainun earlier, this is part of a 7 series webinar, almost like a Netflix program. So I hope the session number 4 today, that we talk a little bit about operations and maintenance full attack, would give you some perspective in terms of how Argenta has been able to embark on this journey. Well, we're still learning, to be honest. This is new to everyone. particularly in Malaysia, but also, the ability for us to learn as well as, help co-create with our partners, with our clients, as well as with the academia in terms of how we take asset management and facilities management to the next level is one that we think as practitioners in the facility management industry that we should share as much as possible. So thank you for giving us an opportunity. I hope I will share some perspective and insights as part of my speaking engagement today, and feel free to ask me as many questions as possible. Broadly today, I think what we wanted to cover, or at least what I wanted to be able to cover, is the perspective on, where has technology brought asset and facilities management today. As we understand it today, facilities management is very, very much a manpower-driven solutions that we provide to a lot of our clients, be it in the commercial space or in the healthcare space or in the industrial space. Together with that, a lot of the contracts are organized on an input-based model, which really doesn't allow us a lot more flexibility in terms of how we manage. And oftentimes we see contracts being given out on a single service basis. So we always talk about soft services on a standalone basis, hard services on a standalone services basis, and then all the value-added services that comes together with it as an add-on feature. Now, I think what's interesting is, as we see the world moving into a completely different direction, particularly in terms of maturity of asset management, as well as maturity in terms of facilities management, technology will be a key determinant in terms of how this industry will change over the next couple of years, going into the next decade, but also more importantly, going into the realms of sustainability. And sustainability becomes a very, very important story that I will talk a little bit about today. Now, I think what we recognize, the second biggest dimension of change that has embodied technology as part and parcel of it is culture. My managing director and group CEO spoke at the conference last week about how culture has defined a lot of the set of practices that defines facilities management uniquely and differently across markets. Magenta, Alhamdulillah, we are blessed with an opportunity to service clients across multiple geography. When we see clients or opportunities to do work in Malaysia and compare that to Singapore, Taiwan, India, Dubai, as well as Saudi Arabia, we see a whole host of complexion of, cultural adaptation to facilities management that really defines in terms of what is the accepted norms. And we hope that technology is one way that brings together culture, but also brings together both, facility managers as well as asset managers and asset owners together on the same page to be able to accept and implement technology in a more harmonized fashion. Now, I'll talk a little bit also about how Magenta has seen this journey, in particular, some of the use cases that we've used in the realms of digitization and digitalization. And maybe I will end by talking a little bit about what we need to think as an industry in terms of how we should start embarking on this journey, or at least move forward from where we are today. Now, one of the more important things to recognize where the space of the industry is today is that the asset and facilities industry is quickly transforming from one that is very traditional, as mentioned earlier, input-based, manpower-based, towards a technology data-driven that circumnavigates around consumers. Now, I think this is a very important point because the concept of convergence that we've seen in the space of wearable devices, for example, the interaction between your mobile phones and every single thing that you see in your home is the same set of convergence that are taking shape in the facilities management industry. And this time around, you're dealing with users, particularly in the case of consumers. You're also dealing with building owners, and also you're dealing with a whole host of stakeholders. So the rapid convergence of stakeholders becomes a very key important topic in terms of what we have to define as industry players is the requirement for asset managers or for facility managers going forward. And one of the important things that we're going to highlight is the fact that consumers are driving a lot of this change. And why we talk a little bit about consumers, if we go across all the facilities that we manage, be it a commercial building, be it a healthcare facility, be it a shopping complex or a shopping mall, or be it an industrial facilities, there are different sets of consumers that has got different sets of requirements that defines the usage as well as the functionality of the facilities, that needs to be tailor-made accordingly towards how the facilities are being managed, how the facilities are going to interact with the surrounding, and how the facilities can be optimized from a cost as well as from a delivery standpoint. So this important about what I call consumer navigation is going to be a very, very important aspect of facilities managers in recognizing the end state consumers, particularly in terms of the future of how technology will drive convergence across technology as well as convergence across demands. Now, if you look at the technology itself today and the world we lived in, obviously there are many sets of technologies that have been developed over the years and that are being functionally used in buildings and assets across the industries. We've moved from a decentralized, fragmented operations into one that is integrated and one that is we're moving into an autonomous operations. Now, I think if I go back a little bit in time, building automation has evolved alongside factory, consumer, and also process automation systems. Starting in the early 1980s, if I'm not mistaken, work has always focused on better ways of reliability. Work has always focused on better ways to reliably connect machines at price point that was practical for even the low price sensors and actuators. But at that time, you find telephones, fire alarms, access control, closed circuit television, power management, lighting, comfort systems, all the systems that you see within a building operated independently from one another over a dedicated cabling, right? So now as IP networks have emerged, facility managers had saw a lot of value of converging systems into a common backbone and standardizing the ways data are being shared. Now, many building automation standards emerge from this process, and I think a lot of us are quite aware of that. That includes BACnet, LawnWorks, KNX, DALI, and others. And utilizing these gateways on ramps towards IP backbone becomes a very, very key critical enabler. Sensors, actuators, displays, and other building systems were embedded within these technologies, and the promise of a truly smart building was one step closer. However, not many people recognize the issue. The issue was, as we had developed technologies, as OEMs had developed a lot of smart technologies that allows us to control, monitor, as well as move into sort of the predictive space. The problem was all these computing and all these competing technologies were non-interoperable. Now I talk about interoperability because interoperability is one of the key things for us to be able to drive integrated autonomous operations. Non-interoperable standards with different physical layers and protocols had created a lot of issues with regards to managing buildings. Since they cannot interoperate, so between one equipment to another equipment, it doesn't speak to each other, we find customers typically selecting and sticking with one particular technology. And this is a very common behavior in the industry until today. Intense price competition meant that few vendors made money selling devices. So instead of embedding innovation, we had killed innovation, and as a result, there was only one single set of technology that emerged. So I think what we need to do moving forward is we need to look at how we secure building automation network at its best. And the way to do that is basically to create an autonomous interoperable network layer that allows multiple equipments to be able to speak each other. And in Agenta, one of the things that we've been working is creation of a digital twin concept, a digital twin where we can harmonize and bring all the data from building and normalizing it into a single database that now opens the data to many people, especially data scientists. Now, all these data from proprietary such as BMS, fire, lift systems, and other systems that have been locked away for a very long time now becomes useful data to operate better today and predict in the future. So this is what we mean by integrated autonomous operation. But fundamentally, the problem underlying that is interoperability. And that's a challenge that we all as facility owners needs to overcome to ensure that we can drive a common harmonious ecosystem of technology solution that can speak to one another, and drive predictive and automated building systems. Now, on the other hand, I think the other important aspect is, like I mentioned, the demand of consumers and how consumer trends are driving behavior. Oftentimes, as facility managers, we forget that whilst we optimize a lot of the facilities in the building, this can be your HVAC system, this could be your lifts, this can be your BMS systems, and everything that goes along within the hardware and the software components of the building, we often forget that, you know, the number one behavior that drives building consumption is actually user behavior, right? So the challenge for facility managers like us is, how do we actually help user behaviors to be a lot more synergistic with building behaviors? And I just give an example. We manage large hospitals, right? And as part and parcel of the services that we do together with Ministry of Health. And oftentimes, whilst we try and optimize the consumption of energy, the consumption of water, the emissions of a hospital, and you know, the use of HVAC systems to try and optimize it, oftentimes we realize that what's driving the consumption pattern is not the equipment. It's really not the equipment. It's the behaviors of people who are in the building. So, for example, if we have an inefficient process in how specific actions are being done in a hospital, that in a way drives different type of behaviors that drive an unoptimized way how buildings are being managed. So one of the things that we are trying to help address in the business of facility managers is not just to provide, you know, the safe, comfort and efficient level for a building occupant, but also to provide the best user experience. So when you move to a mall, you have a clear perspective in terms of, you know, that drives your journey in a shopping mall. When you are using a building, for example, in KLCC, the consumption pattern of, you know, going from one place to another is well read and well understood, and we create a user experience that is best reflected from a real-time adaptation as well as virtual and flexible to cater to the new set of requirements. Then we move into predictive and automated, and a lot of people recognize that moving into predictive and automated is one of, again, a journey. You've got to be able to harness the information and the data. You've got to be able to understand what the underlying data behind it, and then you've got to be able to then figure out what AI algorithms that help you drive predictive capabilities or automated capabilities. And these are things that could drive basically either in a form of, you know, automated safety operations or predictive facility management and building control that ultimately drive sustainability and efficiency as part and parcel of the process. So as we move towards the journey, as the world head towards, you know, a net carbon zero proposition, the Prime Minister of Malaysia, as part of RMK 12, had launched where Malaysia would be net carbon zero at the very minimum before 2050. That in itself is a commitment, and we as facility managers have a large role. I'll talk about it in a bit as well. Just moving on. Now, in terms of what does it mean to us in particular, and how do we move forward? In the past, we've seen that basically a lot of the activities are building centric. Now, again, on the back of convergence, on the back of users and user behaviors, the forward-looking view of facility management is going to be one of demand-centric, which is people-centric. The users themselves will define what is the requirement. So we've moved from integrated asset facilities management, where we're able to do a combination of soft services, hard services in an integrated manner, where, you know, the business is all about operational efficiency, and there are thousands of dedicated workforce that are, you know, cookie cut in terms of capability. So we have cleaners, we have you know, HVAC system specialists, we have lift specialists, and et cetera, et cetera. So that in a way has been pretty much the traditional way of facility management being looked at. Now at Agenta, what we have is the ability to look at, what some of the future demands for asset managers are going to be. And a lot of it is driven from some of the experience that we have in the foreign markets, particularly in Singapore, as well as in Dubai, where the combination of technology has driven really the new art of how intelligent building are sort of co-mingling between one another to drive, things like preventative analytics, space optimization, digital twin, as I discussed earlier. Now, what you find very, very quickly is efficiency is no longer the game. Cost and consumption optimization, as I mentioned earlier, becomes the game. So user experience and how do you optimize the consumption behavior, the consumption pattern of users becomes a very, very important dimension to this. Now, as we move towards the future and where a lot more convergence will drive the interconnectedness of buildings and the interconnectedness of facilities within a city, this is where really the reshaping of how facility managers and asset owners need to look at, from not just from a perspective of cost, but more from a perspective of how do we enable ourselves to drive revenue and profitability by looking at adding value to our clients. This could be anywhere from, how do we think about an ESG play integrated as part and parcel of facility management, either in a form of carbon trading or either in a form of utilities as a service, waste as a service, or even energy as a service. There is a lot more user experience. The users are going to be, more driven in a way of personalization. So you would expect most of the users would have a certain application to be able to drive certain type of requirements in the building on their fingertips. And that's really the future of, where we think facility management needs to come. Less so about the technology, but more so about the realization of, where this is changing from a building centric to a demand people centric. And so we've got to listen. As asset owners, facility managers, we've got to listen to what the demands are going to be like, and we've got to be able to be innovative, and we've got to be able to react very, very quickly to be to provide these sort of capabilities to the market. So if we look at how do we get there, I think one of the more important enablers is in terms of how do we reimagine the work. Now, when we talk about reimagining the work, we really talk a little bit about defining the future of work, where there's a combination of people, but also a combination of machine. And a lot of time, I think facility management is very much a people-centric business. And I think with the advancement of technology, we've seen a lot of combination of machines in our operations today. So for example, in Singapore, where we manage hospitals across the MOH in Singapore, we've been using smart robots, for example, to do different types of cleaning and UV sterilization that help reduces and optimize, the manpower requirement at the facility, but also make sure that the facility is safe and secure in cases where you need to run operations on a 24/7 basis. In some of the infrastructure assets that we manage, for example, highways, where we find, work such as grass cutting becomes very, very menial, but at the same time, less efficient if you start using your traditional I would say grass cutters, people grass cutters. You would oftentimes find that that piece of work will have to be done almost triple or quadruple the amount of time as compared to having used, for example, grass cutting machines, which we have invested on, which reduces the time by 75% and optimize the costs. And of course, the deployment of other technologies such as drone to look at inspection and maintenance will help drive the overall ways of how we reimagine the work. So the first set of solution for us as facility managers is to really get out there and rethink about the ways of working and how we can coexist between people and machine to be able to drive efficiency in terms of how we deliver the work to our clients. And I think what's important in there is recognizing that, one, you get an efficiency out of the practices that we typically do, but two, don't forget, with machines you have an immense load of information and data. And why this is important, because this will help drive your next step of digitalization journey, because with data you're able to then look at what more can you optimize. The second important thing is really in terms of how we look at reimagining experience. Now, I think when we look at reimagining experience, this comes back to the concept of convergence, where in terms of, when we look at the users themselves, the set of requirements of the users are changing. Asset owners, asset managers are redefining what is required for them, from, having a facility that allows to be able to be hyper aware on its own, to giving insights to consumers into exactly what they need. For example, we were recently in Dubai, where we were visiting a mall, and part and parcel of that facility entail a wayfinder with geofencing capabilities through an app with digital concierge and linked to a mobile payment. And all this is done through an integrated network of technology that links the facilities, what the facilities have to offer to the consumers, and also what the consumer wants. And similarly in highways, where we've been using technology to help reimagine the experience, for example, in terms of how we scan potholes and how we look at degradation of pavement materials, to be able to provide real-time monitoring, but at the same time looking at how we can improve our overarching asset management strategy. The third point is in terms of reimagining development, and I think this is probably where Dr. Yohanes will talk a little bit, coming from her background, where when we talk about development, one of the important things to recognize is in the past, it's very, very common and traditional that asset construction and asset management or facilities management are decoupled right from the start. So you would find architect working closely with contractors and developers to build a building, but very often you would find asset owners or asset managers and facility managers not being in the picture only until at the very last minute when the building is about to be commissioned. Now that's just created an immense amount of problem. One, because a lot of times when we take over a building, for example, a new build, we find that the development itself is typically not catered towards the requirement of the asset owners. And oftentimes as facility managers, when we come in, we have to undertake a significant amount of revamp or would say redesign in certain parts of the buildings to be able to cater to the end user requirements. This not only pose a problem to the contractors or the developers because of the defect liability period, but it introduces more costs up to building owner. So one of the biggest challenge and one of the biggest move as an industry that we need to think about as part and parcel of how we move and digitize our operations is the behavior of how we find convergence between asset owners, between architects, between contractors and developers, as well as between asset and facility managers at the pre-conceptualization stage of a building, at the construction stage of the building, and at the operations and maintenance stage of the building. You have to almost see it as a consolidated ecosystem where, for example, a particular facility is being built with know-how, knowledge combined from all ecosystem partners. Now, this is a lot more technology, and it's going to be a lot more data-driven. But beyond technology and data, the efficiency that you would look at from an energy standpoint, the ability to drive hyper awareness, as well as sustainability of buildings become a very, very important angle as part and parcel of this consolidation. One of the things that we did recently with one of our clients, which is Petronas and KLCC Properties, is where we help them reimagine development. Obviously, as you know, KLCC is an asset that has been built over 20 years today. One of the key activities that we had undertaken with KLCC Properties is to help create a modernization of the building through an integrated command and contact center coupled with a digital twin solution. So now you have all the actuators, all the controllers, all the building equipments, although there are different sets of technologies from different OEMs, coming together and sharing a same set of data through an interoperable layer that allows data to be harmonized. And we find that has been a significant value add from understanding how then we drive the next level of hyper awareness, or what we call predictive and preventative maintenance. Now, beyond that, I think once you move into understanding the data that you can harmonize from this technology or from this set of equipments, you're then able to realize how you can combine and how you can drive new AI algorithm together with IoT sensors and technologies to drive what we call a hyper-aware building, or in a classical way, if you look at autonomous vehicle, where vehicles are able to sort of triangulate its own situation and be able to give a command in terms of whether we should stop or whether we should move or whether we should accelerate. In the same way, building owners will have the ability to do that through an interoperable layer with harmonized data linked to AI algorithm, as well as linked to IoT and sensors for that. We've worked with multiple asset owners on this, and we see this as a solution that can help spearhead the industry into the next set of change as far as facility management is concerned. The last topic in terms of how we should think about the world moving forward and how technology and digital is going to drive this is the topic of sustainability. And I think this becomes very, very important topic now, especially with the conclusion of COP26 more recently last week, and ultimately also the drive towards net carbon zero, which has to be achieved by 2050 to prevent from a 2 degrees rise of carbon Celsius. Now, a lot of us will be asking the question: how has this got to do with facilities management, and how has this got to do with building? Whilst it's important to realize that facility management is an important aspect of keeping longevity of facilities and also maintaining life cycle investments of different type of buildings and facilities, we oftentimes forget that about 40% of emissions today actually come from buildings. And these emissions are coming either from what we call embodied carbon as well as operational carbon. So operational carbons or operational emissions are everything that a building would emit, be it your greenhouse gas emission, or be it the use of energy through HVAC systems, or being the consumption of water that indirectly as well as directly contributes to greenhouse emission. So out of that 40%, about 30% or so comes from operational emissions. Now, another 10% comes from what we call embodied carbon, and embodied carbon is a very interesting topic. And this is an area where emissions are being looked at from a perspective of the manufacturing, transportation, and installation of building materials. How sustainable are the building materials that we are using to help drive long-term sustainability? Now, whilst this is an important step, don't forget that one of the biggest challenge that I would say the industry as a whole would have to be able to rise up to the challenge is that global floor space, or the amount of surface areas where buildings will start occupying, moving to 2060 will double, right? So we're going to go 2x in terms of growth, and that basically means that if I look at that as an example, this is an equivalent to adding an entire New York City to the planet every month for the next 40 years. If you imagine that amount of growth that is happening in building and complexes in terms of facilities, that's the amount of challenge that we need to face. However, I think the other issue is, if you look at all these new investments that are coming in towards creating sustainable green building, only 3% of investments, or global investments today, in new construction is either green or efficient, which means that another 97% of these investments are pretty much, very conventional type of building that needs to be managed more efficiently, and there needs to be looked on more sustainability from a green perspective. But don't forget, those are new buildings, and those are going to drive basically 50% of the problem. The other 50% of the problem is your brown facilities, right? So your existing buildings, and if we look at the existing buildings or the existing facilities, retrofit or renovation for existing buildings is it's barely at a 1% rate globally, and it's less than 1/3 that is required to achieve net zero. So with that, I think if you look at some of the examples in terms of how we've helped decarbonize or help clients in terms of managing sustainability, and these are some of the examples, for example, in the Prime Minister's office in Malaysia, where we help secure GBI Platinum certification through an energy performance contracting, where we've been able to reduce almost 40% in energy consumption and water consumption. Now, this is done right. Now, this is done, if it's done right, it not only reduces costs and emissions. I think what's important is we realize that one of the significant increasing advantages of moving towards a sustainable building, and this is where technology comes in, is it brings a more healthier and a more balanced equity and a more balanced economic prosperity to communities. And that's one of the biggest examples that we've seen in Sultanah Maleha Hospital in Langkawi, where we help this very old facility, I would say about 40 years, achieve the world's first LEED version 4 gold certificate as part and parcel of its rating. And this is a feat that I think Malaysia should be proud of, because being one of the first hospitals in the world to be given this accreditation, but also is something that I think we can continue to drive as part and parcel of our project going forward. Now, I think there are many other aspects that we have to look at from a sustainability standpoint, not just energy as well as resources, but also the concept of waste as a service, the concept of utilities as a service, as well as the concept of energy as a service. The ability to integrate all these dimensions into facilities and facilities of the future, together with technology, becomes a very crucial enabler for companies like Agenta, but also for the industries as a whole, where we combine sustainability and technology or digitization as part and parcel of facilities management going forward. Last but not least, this is my last slide, Cik Shahrainon. Just a quick one in terms of how and where should we get started. I think it's very, very key to understand that if I go back to the first slide, where I talk about the world moving towards a convergence, where you have the convergence of players, be it asset owners, be it consumers, be it regulators, and at the same time convergence of technology and the move towards a demand-centric required facility management approach, you would realize that a lot of the actions that we have to take is driven on the form of partnerships. So when we look at gaps, we have to recognize that it's not just gaps that we look at from a perspective of asset owners. We have to look at gaps from a perspective of consumers. We have to look at gaps from a perspective of regulators. That, in a way, will help us drive a holistic view in terms of what are the capabilities and skills and competencies that we need to help address going forward, be it data scientists, be it automation engineers, or even be it the ability to look at new technologies to drive certain set of solutions in the market. The second thing is, from a partnership standpoint, is no one in this picture is going to be able to drive single-handedly innovation that could drive the facility management industries to the next level. So co-creation becomes a very, very important piece. A lot of the opportunities that Agenta has been going after over the past couple of years has been done through a concerted action of partnerships, either with technology companies or with asset owners in particular, like KLCC Properties or like the Ministry of Health, where we've helped facilitate a co-creation approach towards solutioning. So this becomes a very important dimension, where solutioning is no longer in your office. Solutioning is going to be out there. It's going to be with your client. It's going to be with your consumers and your customers. And for us in Agenta, we've also taken the next step in terms of creating our own, I would say, technology company called Agenta Next, that is meant to partners with various ecosystem players to be able to help drive the solution. So I invite the opportunity to cross-collaborate with different players across the market. And last but not least, this is a journey, as I mentioned early on in my presentation. This is a journey. We are here to learn. I'm here personally to learn about what's next in the industry. And I think we can all grow this part and parcel as part of our rollout automation of a rollout of programs, be it in-house program or external programs. And so that's why I think, this program or series that is organized by CIDB and Microcorp is one of a very important series that helps partners, solution providers, and different players in the market to be able to share as well as to be able to learn. So with that, thank you very much. I hope you bear with me on my very short presentation. Happy to take questions later. Thank you so much, Sharanun, for giving me the opportunity.
Thank you, Mr. Rais. Yeah, wow, full insight. I think he tabled up how for us to move forward for the full attacks. I think it's a lot of things that been done in Magenta actually. So thank you very much for the sharing and the insightful information. And then all right, I would like to invite our second speaker, Surveyor Dr. Yohanis Butalib. So it might, after we know how to do the full attacks, maybe we need to understand the fundamental of it. So over to you, Doctor.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi and salam sejahtera and very good afternoon and evening to everyone in this virtual room. Okay, my name is Yohanis Abdul Talib from UIT Ampera. I'm a senior lecturer at Faculty of Architecture, Planning and Surveying. I've been teaching for about 20 years. Okay, let me share my slide now.
Yep.
Oops.
Scroll it down.
Okay, so the topics of tonight is, before that, I would like to thank CIDB and Microcorp for inviting me to share some ideas of for this topic, operations and maintenance full attack. So if we talk, just now we listen on very high-tech stuff, holistic and strategic level, and very interesting. I guess mine is on the topic of strategic operations and maintenance process. A way forward is look at we have to pick up the lower fruit first, I guess, and gradually grasp the basics and theory of FM, and further then look at the holistic and strategic level. Okay, just you can look here. There are scenarios where, happen when lockdown, the interior building are lack of air circulations, very humid, where building are not in use at a longer period of time, and firstly, elements like carpets, fabrics from fabric, wallpapers, furnitures are badly deteriorated. Like we never thought that it will happen, right?
Yes.
Okay, so this basic operations and maintenance are looking at the three triangle of basic principle that we have: building and location, process and technology. So these have to be has to be done by human resources, where at the three levels, strategic level, where decision making happen on the process of decision making, business organizations, vision and missions of the organization, and the second level are tactical level, where this is the technology in the engineers, the sub-skill workers, and the bottom level is operation level, that the technical level are dealing with, technical level as the middle level, dealing with strategic level on stock, and dealing with operation level at the below it. Operation level, we are looking at the, when we talk about 3D, okay, dirty, dangerous, and difficult stuff on the operation. despite of what we have now that Mr. Rais had mentioned on the robotic thing, on the IR 4.0 that we have going into right now, AI, augmented reality, IoT, you know, Internet of Things, and so on, we still have to cater the 3D elements in this operation level. Okay, these are the basics type of maintenance. There are 7 types. If I can, you know, go through a bit, where we have planned maintenance is always a predicted maintenance, and it's all the resources are all ready. Second, unplanned maintenance, where is ad hoc and impromptu process, where we have to use whatever available resources. The third one is preventive maintenance, is always involved with expensive and complicated item like lift, HVAC to ensure the performance is at the top level and to reduce the degradations. The next one is corrective maintenance, is dealing with element that we have to do, we have to correct when its failure happen, to reduce the degradation as well, to restore the item, like when we replace lacking of roof, when we replace the door and windows, like, you know, we have to do it urgently. And as well as emergency maintenance is about very important facilities that need immediate repairs to avoid serious consequences. Next is condition-based maintenance. This is also derived from routine maintenance, monitoring, and is to avoid further dilapidation, deterioration that can reduce the functions of the building. Last but not least is schedule maintenance. This always refer back to life cycle costing, where it's prepared earlier. Like we do painting in next 20 years, we do roof replacement of roof in next 40, 50 years. But we have always, we can always look back at the life cycle costing when the time goes by. Okay, this, I pick up the basic 4 types that always like a must have, because some organization doesn't have all 7 types. So these are the basic type with where proactive and prevention, we have to do it routine, and emergency, as I mentioned before, is immediate action to avoid further consequences, to ensure the building functions at a very best, correction and corrective in regards to its repair and replace of the function of the facilities, of the elements of the buildings. And lastly, schedule maintenance is a periodic maintenance, where we have to cater it before the problem occurs. And these are very, I think, very common operation and maintenance process. We have in-house maintenance. We have outsourced maintenance, where they are at best, if we can have both, where we call hybrid maintenance, where some organization have to pick up what has to be in-house to reduce costs, to ensure is operate well at a best function, and what's maintenance that they have to outsource, like very high technology, very like periodic and preventive maintenance using skilled people, so we have to outsource. So this hybrid maintenance, both are good in regards to the functions of the organization itself. Okay, So now we go to a bit detail on the assessments of operations and maintenance. So if you look at the first step, there are maybe a sole person or a group of people who in charge. The step 2 where maintenance asset are record all those type like HVAC, plumbing, sanitary services, firefighting leave and whatnot. So this step 2 at the tactical level. So step 3 and 4 as well as tactical level, where maintenance schedule are being done and the decision making. These two to and fro where they has to be revised consequently to redecide maybe. And step 4 still at the tactical level where the operations and the activity is being done. And if you look at the stage before we go to stage 5, there are target that has to be achieved. You know, if it's yes, then we can continue from the step 2, or if no, there's something that are lacking or not achieved in terms of the functions, the budgetaries, you know, so we have to revise the decision. So this is at the strategic level where very crucial if involve decision making, re-decision making process where it have to close the loop. You know, we have to redecide maybe, so we go back maybe at the stage 2, or maybe we have to rectify at the stage 3, or maybe at the stage 4. Okay, so this is to achieve target. Next. So we look at the main objective of operation and maintenance. If you can see here, there are 3 layers or 3 level. So the first one is the basic thing that must have: safety, legislation, quality. I think this all has covered by the detail I saw in slides by Encik Rais. You know, they are must have for FM operations in operating maintenance. Okay, stage 2, when we achieve this safety, legislation and quality, we can cater the fit for purpose of the building, whereby we can have by having a good quality, the safety and the legislation, and therefore we can also have conducive building, conducive environment to fulfill the user of the building. And finally, the third stage where it can derive increased value of asset for investment, where this is the crucial part in a strategic level, where the building can be resell or rent or lease, and upgrade the needs of the building, and most importantly can lengthen the life of the building, where in this stage in Malaysia we have so many dilapidation building, you know, at some level less maintained when they are not occupied. So it's very crucial where the asset is going down. Okay, so next one is the main factors of operations and maintenance. So these are 6 factors that I can pick up. Planning, where we can do we have to look at the short-term and long-term planning, where we can revisit the short-term and scrutinize by doing a long-term planning budget in terms of it life cycle costing again, where facility management actually has to come in at the very early stage, especially at the design stage. Especially when we dealing with complicated building like designing a hospital, designing a hotel, the first team manager have to come in earlier to to give advice in terms of the functions, okay, and operate a procedure as well in terms of the strategic level up, go down to operation level, and human resource. We are talking about less people come in where we use IT, when IT are taking place, you know, when we dealing with big data, building information modeling. So this all has to be dealt by human resource, you know. So it has to be a human in those IT staff, you know. So it's still very important when we're dealing with human resource. Standard and legislation is all about Building Act, insurance, and lastly, health and safety. Health and safety is about when we're dealing with technicality, high technology, even in terms of its IT security, you know. And these all differ when we dealing with different building, high-rise building, office building, even green technology building have a very different sets of those. Hospital, education building, like we are talking now, Malaysia has very you know, spread of education building everywhere, you know. So we have temporary building, we have permanent building, we have different set and functions of building. For education building, we have commercial building like hotel, all kind of hotels now everywhere. And last but not least, all the infra works, you know, the roads, the subway, we don't have subway, airports, the bridge, you know, and all those. And I think I can conclude with operations and maintenance management have to be strategically managed through holistic facility management. We are business operation. As I mentioned before, we have to link the strategic level to the tactical level and go down to operation level to have this in regards to this 5 items: the building itself, looking at the type of the building, the functions, and the most important thing is life cycle costing at the very beginning, the machinery, ever we want to rent or lease, and have to predetermine by preparing life cycle costing, and have to facility management have to involve at this level of technique. Okay, the third one is services, where we want to use outsource or in-house, and what is going to be a strategic change where we use hybrid. And the system itself, we are talking about IT stuff, big data, building information modeling, CMMS, which is a computerized maintenance management system, and IoT, you know, so many things, IR 4.0, what else? So many things that we can grasp on the IT stuff. And finally, human resource, where it happened at all level, as I said before, to have to be integrated and streamlined, and here we can impose lean management, where maybe we have least human resource dealing with those IT staff in order to reduce costs, in order to it become a strategic, as what Mr. Rais has presented before, and therefore can increase the productivity of the business, and finally to lengthen the life of the building. I guess this is my last slide, just a pictures of new norms that what we have now. Oh, sorry. Okay, where here we have to impose new standard of operations and maintenance to cater the needs of the building occupier. where to ensure the building can serve at its best in regards of its functions, operations, and business purposes. Therefore, I would like to thank you for your attentions, and I try to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you.
Audience, thank you very much.
Great, Dr. Yohanis. I think now we can see the spectrum. You can see how Mr. Raif built that and what are inside, what are the things that we need to have before we reach that level. It's like, it's the journey, to reach that level, you need to understand what Dr. Yohanis explained. It's not a simple thing to do, but it's many knowledge need to be built up. Many knowledge need to be grouped together in order for us to reach what UAM Magenta has now. So I think you can see the two different angle and how we need to to go for the battles. How we want to go for the full attacks. If we don't have what Dr. Yohanis said, can we win the battles? Okay, so that's, I think this is the two things for the participant to think about. And we would like to take a question. I think we have a list of questions, Mr. Rais. I think we start with for you, Mr. Rais. I think this from TS Muhammad Rashidi Marzuki. Dear sir, considering the capacity and robustness of your data throughout various industries that Agenta is managing, may I know if you are using in-house developed proprietary system, or perhaps you can share any systems, any FM systems?
Yeah, thank you so much, TS Muhammad Rashidi. That's a very important question, and it's a pertinent question to also ask. I think if you come back to Agenta's journey, we started as someone who you would use a system that would be available in the market. So any CMS system for that matter that would do the job. I mean, today you can find many proprietary systems that actually works wonders on the basic functionality. The challenge has never been the system, right? This is what we discovered, right? The challenge has never been the system. Even Oracle today or SAP today have got an add-on functionality that allows you to do facilities management, at least the basic ones. What we recognize very, very quickly, because of the complexity and the scale of operations that we manage, for example, a large aggregate of hospitals, 1,000 kilometers of road on the north-south highway, 150 assets and buildings in Dubai, for example. A lot of the system does not cater to the needs of our clients and consumers, particularly in terms of being able to help track and monitor the right KPIs, help them drive specific level of efficiency. So we went through a learning journey. As we had learned from what didn't work, from understanding then what clients had wanted, we embarked on a journey of co-creating, like I said, co-creating systems that would actually be able to help cater and address clients' requirements, rather than something that is just very much generic. Now, of course, customization comes with a cost, and I think as much as possible, 5 years ago or even 3 years ago, customization would be very, very expensive. But I think if you look at today and how microservices are being developed as part and parcel of a software package, you can manage that cost to customize, so as long as you're very clear in terms of your development approach. So don't go build a completely new software with all the functionalities and features. Try to be able to look at it from a microservices standpoint, a bit like add-ons as you go along, test it out and run through solutions. So today at Agenta, we have our set of proprietary solutions. So for example, in the hospital, we use basically our own hospital management system, which is called UE Track. In highways, we have our own road asset maintenance system, which is called RAMS. And we have a number of that, and more than happy to collaborate with industry players to be able to co-develop and further enhance the system as we think about the future.
Yeah, I remember, Mr. Rais, I think a few years ago, I coined a name for the hospital's management system, especially for FM. I call it SOFIA.
Sophia.
Operasi Facility Infrastructure Asset Hospital is synonym with the nurses' names, doctor names. You know? You have symptoms, you go and meet Sophia or call Sophia. So I think this is how this I mean the names or the solution that we need to create it to help the digitalization punya activities lah. Okay, Doctor, I think we have also a question for you. You know? So we saw what Mr. Rais have done, you know, what Magenta have meets the goals or the objective of towards digital transformation, or especially I like to call it digital twins. You know? So, and what is the challenge of the university to produce the people that required by the industry now? What is your challenge now? I mean, we have like, I mean, you have the fundamentals, you know. I mean, everybody need to know, you know. But then out there is a digital things that maybe the industry require other things. What are the challenges of the academicians and the university to produce people nowadays?
Okay, I think the challenge here is the soft skill. We have IR 4.0. So now here in university, in the academic line, we inject five EDU, meaning this 4.0 IR have to be managed by the human, you know, by the human person, which is human resource. So the decision making process has to cater at all level, has to be a strategic decision making, has to be integrated with all along the way. And especially when it comes to design stage, they are team that we have to collaborate to redesign on the design, because when we talk about design, maybe we are talking about the designers, the architect, the engineer, but maybe here come the facility manager, you know, to foresee what is the design would be when is at its operation level, where we got BIM to foresee, you know, when we talk about 4D, 5D, even now we are talking about 6, 7D, the dimensions, you know, on BIM. So this is all the student have to be aware with.
Yeah, I think so what we experience when we dealing with these high-tech things, you know, because data cannot be changed. I mean, when they say no is no, yes is yes. The important thing is the human behavior need to be tailored, need to be aligned, you know, so then they can do like the honesty, you know. So
exactly,
this is the things that we need to inject to our new breed of people or the graduates, you know. This not just about the technology skill, you know, because they will be available easily, but the soft skills, the inner side, you know, I call it the behavior, the psychology behavior things that need to be built now. Otherwise, people will think like a robot, or maybe they're not think like a robot. Okay, so
exactly. And to add on is integrity.
Yeah.
When we talk about IT thing, is there are integrity in the IT thing that as easily can be spread. You know, all those secret things in the IT system.
Yeah.
That is very crucial at the moment.
Okay.
I
have another question. Sorry, Doctor. I have another question that we need to address to Mr. Rais. So I think it's popular tonight. Okay. Another question from Abdul Malik Aliu. Okay. Mr. Rais is generally perceived that the data-driven culture is a key aspect that will drive the digital transformation in the FM industry. However, only with the right analytic in place. But on your experience, what are the common challenges faced by your organization or other organization when implementing data analytics for operation maintenance? I think this is a good question, Malik.
Thank you, Abdul Malik Aliu, for the question. The challenges is a lot, and I find that these challenges are a lot more upstream to data analytics as compared to the act of doing the analytics themselves. The good thing is, I think, even in Malaysia and many other markets, we are creating more and more data analysts, and I think this is where I think it will be very, very good for universities, for academia to help create a lot more data analysts. And I think this is where the future is, not just in facilities management, but in just generally overarching, like what Dr. Yohannes mentioned, the world is moving towards IR 4.0, the proliferation of data is really going to create a new set of opportunities for, young data scientists. Now, I think if I talk about data analytics, the challenge, in the data analytics itself is what I had described earlier, right? The problem with a lot of equipments that we deal with today, be it your lift systems, fire systems, your control equipments, your monitoring equipments, they are all OEM specific. The codes, the data are very much locked in. And when I say locked in, I mean basically all these building automation networks are often physically and logically isolated to protect from a cyber attack. So that's a good thing, right? That's a good thing because we don't want any cyber attack.
Yeah.
Now, in the creation of that, what we find is the combination of proprietary protocols and isolation made the data that these equipments carry inaccessible to other systems.
Yeah.
So I will give you an example, right? For me to figure out how I can optimize between my lift systems and my power distribution systems, I need to be able to harmonize the data sets that are coming from the user consumption or patterns from my lifts, as well as to be able to figure out the power loads that are being provided to my lifts. How do I generate peak consumption or peak energy demand in my lift operations during a particular day in a building versus when my power load can be managed downwards so that I can optimize any energy loss through the system. The problem is the lift operates on a different system and the power loads operate on a different system, and they all spit out different set of data. So one of the biggest challenge that we as an industry, and I think this is where data scientists will have to spend a lot of time in terms of working out the solution, is to create an interoperable layer. And I talk a little bit about this. It's basically a layer where, in a very basic layman's term, you harmonize the language of the data into a common language, which means now everyone understands that language. So the lift can understand the power load language, and the power load can understand the lift language. When you're able to harmonize that data set, then you can actually proliferate the set of analytics that you want to drive, right? And the set of programming that you want to create to help create algorithms or softwares that will be able to regulate, in the example I gave, power load and lift systems. Just hypothetically, that was one of the biggest challenge we had to solve for KLCC Properties, because there was a lot of legacy equipments which needed to be upgraded, but at the same time there were many preferred OEM manufacturers of different equipments in the building. To be able to drive effective analytics, you need to be able to think about a language where where all the equipments can speak to one another, right? And that's what we're trying to figure out, and at the same time help solve. But there are many other challenges. I think a lot of times the amount of data being collected is also a challenge. Typically, you find there's a lot of junk in the data that you collect. There's only like 10% that is something that is worth doing something about it. So being able to collect meaningful and real-time data becomes a very important thing. The representation, the visual representation of data, for example, is also another important aspect. So creation of data visualization through digital twin solutions becomes very, very eye-opening to asset owners to really understand, what then are we trying to solve. So I would say those are the biggest set of challenges that I see from data, at least from the types of challenges that we are trying to solve in the industry today. And I think where the industry have to be able to work collaboratively. So OEMs, facility owners, facility managers, as well as data scientists, to be able to create a harmonious environment. It's a bit like the Google car, where it's a car that is able to read every single data in its surrounding before it makes a decision.
Yeah. Yeah, I think when you said about the integration you do now, I remember like maybe in 1995 or 97, I involved for the total airport management where I'm one of the integrator. So I need to integrate, I think, half of the TEM subsystem. At that time, the IT is not really the IT. The communication is very, very not like, so. I remember that I need to integrate analog and digital, and you want to get the reading. So, it was best part in my life when I involved in that project. Okay, Doctor, I think I have one last question. This is, I think, I addressed to you about the dear speaker, Sir Rais and Dr. Yohani. I think I addressed to you, Doctor. Seek your explanation for BIM in early stage of asset development for facility evaluation, and how about ISO in FM? Wow, that's new, ISO in FM. I think.
Come again, the questions?
It's about the seek your explanation for BIM in early stage asset development for facility evaluation, and how about ISO facility management? I think they have two questions. One is about BIM, and another one is about ISO FM.
Okay, I think I can elaborate a bit on BIM, where BIM at a very basic on the designing, where we don't need, where QS like cannot cari makan, where all the architect can have all the quantities there, the drawing is from the software, it come, it's all in one with the costing, with the quantities, and when if upgrade to the another level of the FM come in, when we look at the operation visually, where we can predetermine what is the life cycle costing could be when we use BIM for another level of 4D, 5D, up to 7D, and they come the next level on the legislation, is it?
Yeah.
Yes. So I'm not well versed on the legislation of the BIM, but it has to be scrutinized by the designers and by the clients to secure the information, especially when the drawing is derived by every parties.
Yeah, can be used by
can be assessed by every parties. Like I have one informations like we have I have experience in looking at the BIM for Opera House in Sydney, where they use the Opera House in Sydney are very, very badly managed after 10-20 years. Thereby, because it's an old building and it's very, very technical at that time. So when it's completed, they have to integrate the BIM into the building to ensure the building is is well maintained, is to achieve at the very good cost for life cycle costing, because it's at that time before BIM being integrated, the cost of operations and maintenance are very high. So I happen to able to look at their BIM solutions on the Opera House.
I think in relate to that, we are actually applying the Senior Opera House concept when we do the first BIM models project or BIM to FM for Ministry of Federal District, which is Ministry of Wilayah now. And now we are going to do it again under our research program with UTHM. We are redeveloping the library. I mean, library is a new one. I mean, the biggest library in Asia, I think.
Interesting.
So we are developing it. We are creating back the library models, and now we are, I think, reaching to level 5 fifth floor. So I think perhaps maybe later if the researcher are going to produce a paper, so we can share it how we did it. We rebuild back the buildings. I think this is the most interesting project that we are actually involved under research and development for asset and space.
Interesting.
Vegetation.
So they have to be involved by the BIM expert.
Yeah, so we involved on that project. We are building it for the UTHM and the research program.
Yeah.
Okay, I think we are reaching to I think we are exceeded 5 minutes extra. We're supposed to end at 9:15, but anyway, it's a good sharing, good insight, Mr. Rais and Dr. Yohanis. I think we have a very insightful night with all the information. Yes, full attacks, so we have knowledge. We also have the experience, and we know what needs to be done. And thank you very much.
Thank you.
Before we end, anything for you? Anything from you, Mr. Rais?
No, thank you very much. I think thanks for the opportunity, Sharanon, and thank you CIDB and Microcorp, as well as to have myself and Dr. Yohanis. Glad to have you on this webinar session as well. Looking forward to interact with some of the participants going forward into the future.
How about Dr. Yohanis?
For me, thank you everyone. Thank you the organizer. Thank you Ms. Rais for very insight of what happened outside the world of education, and thank you for the audience for having me tonight.
Okay, before we end the webinar session, participants please take out a few moments, fill in feedback form to obtain the CCD and CPD point from CIDB. It's a free for you. The link for the feedback form will be posted in the chat box session. And thank you everyone. Thank you Mr. Rais for having together with us. Thank you Dr. Yohanis. So thank you also CIDB for making this webinar success. We appreciate your being here. Thank you again for joining us today, and we will see you on the 5th webinar session on next Tuesday, 30th November, under the journey process improvement, empowering the wounded warriors. So after the full attack, definitely we have a wounded warrior. So how to handle the wounded warriors. So Assalamualaikum and good night. Thank you.